Today, we're looking at Colorverse Hubble Zoom. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Colorverse Hubble Zoom is a brown ink, and I would really like to know how they chose brown for Hubble Zoom. It would just be kind of an interesting thing. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's Ahab with a modified flex nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds, and we see this orange line across the bottom. Some yellows work up, some more oranges, some purples. Beautiful. It's, again, I know I've said it before, but browns are one of those things that are tough to mix in colors and have a nice one. I think we do have a nice one here, and it's coming from those oranges and purples put together. Now, the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and there is a noticeable difference on the line on the bottom. It's a brown line on the bottom. You barely see any of the yellow anymore, and the purple is all the way down to it. So it would seem to me that there's going to be a bit of hold on, a bit of resistance that comes with this ink. Now, resistance tests they're done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. And I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it, for the most part, does very well, but that lowercase h, which is always my trouble letter, that lowercase h, it bloomed out entirely, and I would be afraid that I might lose something important if I used this. Water reinforces what we see with the highlighter. It removed very little of this ink. There's a lot of it left behind. It's really staying with what we saw in the second chromatography, where we see a lot of that brown across the bottom. Pen flush did about as much as water did. It didn't lift much more, but we see kind of very light greenish browns left from the flush. It could have been a chemical reaction from the ammonia that's in there. Now, bleach removes most all of it. Bleach is a huge warning sign to me. Now, because I don't see a clear dot, it does make me worry that this might be more stubborn to get out of your pens. Although I haven't really seen problems with it, but it's just one of those things to be aware of when we don't see the bleach completely remove it, that it might take, a little bit of time. I wouldn't leave this in your pen for a month, is how I when I see bleach like that. Now, as far as flow, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Colorverse Hubble Zoom has a viscosity of 2.32, making it perfectly normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and I average those done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Colorverse Hubble Zoom has an average dry time of 17 seconds. Right on average. Perfect. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shading whatsoever with this ink. None. The extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shading whatsoever with this ink. Now, I've heard people talk about a bunch of times where the Colorverse has great shading, and they were saying that so fast right when it came out. But I don't always really see it. 12 seconds to dry for the extra fine. Medium, noticeably darker tone, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 15 seconds to dry. This is the nicest brown I see on this page. The tone is slightly different than I get with the 1.1. 15 seconds to dry. Dry times are pretty good. The scrubby for both show no color variation. We got none. And a smear test, I don't think you could recover it if you smeared it. Now, Tomoe River has no bleeding. Of course it has ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade at all. I don't know. It's just extra fine, noticeably lighter tone with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 19 seconds to dry. Medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 26 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us no color variation. We got no color variations. The smear test, you do not stand a chance in Hades of making a recovery of that one. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 had no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and still no shading. The extra fine had no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and we do get spots of shading. In quick, it starts with that same tone. It gets a little bit darker. The darker becomes more like the 1.1. Fox starts lighter and gets darker. Over starts lighter and gets darker. Dog starts lighter and gets darker. So we do see some of it here with the extra fine. 14 seconds to dry. Back to the dark tone on the medium. No feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 16 seconds to dry. The extra fine showed us no color variation, but we did get a little bit of color variation. The medium showed us a little bit of color variation. We got none. The smear test you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Can yellow paper help bring out some of the shading or tone, niceties with this ink? The yellow Rhodia had no bleeding and no ghosting, so what happened to the tone? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. This is unwavering on its colors, on its tones. The 1.1 still had no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. The extra fine had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and the yellow paper ate up the shading that the extra fine was giving us with the white paper. So if shade matters to you with this ink, don't use yellow tone paper. 14 seconds to dry. Medium, noticeably darker tone. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 16 seconds to dry. So here's the thing. The tones don't even look the same as what I got on a swab. Scrubby for the extra fine and medium showed us no color variation. We got no color variation. And a smear test says you could likely recover it if you did smear it. Life paper. It's a laid paper. It's a very nice performing paper. One of my favorites. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, I don't like what the cream color does to the color of this ink. It's not a fault of the ink, but it's always good to test your inks on different papers and really have an idea. And this is a great example of why, because this one just becomes gross on this paper. It's not a bad ink. It's a great paper. It's gross together. The 1.1 had no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, but looks gross. The extra fine had no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer shading because it starts with a much lighter tone than we got with the 1.1, and it has areas that go to darker. The bottom of the Q in Quick is darker than the rest of Quick, and the right side of K is darker than the rest of Quick. The starts light and gets dark. Brown stays light the whole way. Fox starts light and gets dark. Nice shading up here, just the color's still kind of ew, but a lighter tone of ew. 12 seconds to dry. Back to the dark tone that we got with the 1.1. With a totally gross color in medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shading. 6 seconds to dry, or 16 seconds to dry. The extra fine scrubby showed us a little color variation. We did get a little color variation. The medium showed us none. We got none. And the smear says you could likely recover that disgusting color. Levenger paper. Levenger paper gave us no bleeding, no ghosting. I love Levenger paper. I love how it performs. Please, Levenger, make it without the lines. The 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Lighter tone for the extra fine with no feather, no spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 9 seconds to dry. Back to the very dark tone on the medium with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 12 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We got no color variation. The smear test says you could likely recover it. And my experience as a slob says you probably could recover it. That's all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Colorverse Hubble Zoom, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Now, I've chosen Diamine Crimson because I just really felt a nice red would bring this up some. Being a very dark color, its complement to me should be a very, bright color. And that's why I went with that crimson, even though it's kind of a red magenta-y color. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. Now, what do I think of Colorverse Hubble Zoom? It's an okay brown. I have a lot of brown inks I prefer over this one. This one to me is just okay. Now that's not really a loss because I think their marketing team is doing a great job. This one's not the one that speaks to me, but I like what they're doing and I really do hope they keep doing it. Even though it is kind of pricey, I'm hoping that those prices either maintain the same as other inks go up, or maybe we get lucky and it comes down a little bit. Again, this ink is a miss for me, but it is not a bad ink at all. Thanks for watching.